Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here is always the same. We take complex sources, layered narratives, and deep research and distill them down to the essential insights you need to be truly well-informed.
And today we're tackling a really powerful story.
We are undertaking, I think, a profound mission today. We are aiming to open the spiritual eyes. We're focusing on a single yet incredibly potent story, the healing of the blind beggar Bartimaeus from Mark chapter 10.
Right. And this story, it's more than just a historical account of a miracle.
Much more. Our source material presents it as a crucial signpost. It points toward what true eternal sight actually means.
It's an essential distinction, really. When we look at this narrative, we're kind of encouraged to look past the physical act. The man getting his sight back.
Which is amazing in itself, of course.
Absolutely. But we need to focus on the carefully constructed symbolism. This account seems designed to highlight a deeper reality, spiritual sight.
So Bartimaeus gets the physical healing, but that's almost like the down payment.
In a way, yeah. That external restoration immediately serves as a catalyst for something far more significant, an internal transformation, what we'd call salvation.
And right at the heart of it all is this question, and it's one that, honestly, I think many of us might struggle with today. Jesus asks Bartimaeus quite simply, "What do you want me to do for you?"
Such a direct question.
And Bartimaeus gives a very direct answer, too, given his, desperate situation. But the implications of how he answers and, the incredible determination he showed just to get there, that's where the keys are for us.
Precisely. We need to really dig into why Bartimaeus' answer didn't just lead to him seeing the world again, but led to his complete spiritual deliverance.
That difference between the practical, immediate, sort of temporal need and the ultimate, eternal spiritual salvation, that's what lifts this from just a healing story into, a masterpiece of spiritual teaching.
Couldn't agree more. It's all layered.
Okay, so let's unpack the setting first. Context is, it's everything here. We meet Bartimaeus. He's identified simply as a blind beggar sitting by the roadside in Jericho. You really have to picture the socioeconomic reality back then, first century Judea.
Yeah, our sources remind us there weren't any, state-sponsored welfare programs. Not like today.
So for someone with a severe physical disability like blindness, begging wasn't a career choice.
No, absolutely not. It was the only way to survive. He was, by definition, completely marginalized, dependent, physically disadvantaged, probably socially invisible to most people walking by.
Just part of the scenery, almost.
Pretty much. Sitting at the gate of the city, which, it's strategic for begging, but it also puts him literally on the edge of society.
Yep.
His weakness was kind of his defining feature in that community.
But here's the thing. Despite those physical limits, Bartimaeus he'd done his homework. He'd gathered intelligence.
He'd been listening.
Exactly. He'd heard the stories, the rumors about Jesus of Nazareth, the miracles, the teaching, and he grasped immediately, this isn't someone to just let walk by.
He recognized the significance. So when he hears the commotion, the noise of this huge crowd surrounding Jesus as they pass through Jericho.
Which must have been considerable, a large crowd in a busy city.
Oh, absolutely. He recognized this was it. A unique, maybe one-time opportunity.
And he acts instantly, no hesitation.
And his action wasn't some quiet, polite request. It was this urgent, desperate, almost demanding cry, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me."
Okay, let's pause on that title for a second. Son of David. That wasn't just a casual name.
No, not at all. It's incredibly significant. He's not just calling him teacher or healer. He's using a title that directly recognizes Jesus' messianic authority.
A loaded term. For the average person in that crowd, Son of David probably brought up strong political nationalist ideas, right?
Definitely. They were likely expecting the Son of David to be this powerful political figure, maybe riding into Jerusalem soon to kick out the Romans and restore the physical kingdom.
But Bartimaeus pairs that powerful title, not with a demand for power or status,
but with a plea for mercy. That's the twist. It shows a different understanding, perhaps.
And what's fascinating, as you said, is the immediate reaction from the crowd.
Yeah, the pushback.
Yeah.
Here's this marginalized, weak guy daring to interrupt this, important procession following Jesus.
How dare he make noise?
Exactly. The people, who probably saw themselves as followers, or at least, respectful citizens, they immediately try to shut him up. They basically condemn him for shouting. He's seen as an unworthy distraction.
And this is where his spiritual character just shines through. The average person, told off by the crowd, shushed by the majority.
You'd probably shrink back, right? Apologize, fade away.
But Bartimaeus does the exact opposite. Instead of stopping, the text says he shouted even louder.
Phenomenal persistence. Just incredible determination.
He refused to let the social disapproval, the noise, the condemnation stop him from reaching the only one who he believed could truly save him. It shows this like laser focus,
Yeah.
unwavering.
And it works. His persistence actually compels Jesus to stop. The text says Jesus heard him and called for him to come forward.
And Bartimaeus' response here is maybe the most telling action in the whole story. We really need to look closely at this.
It says he jumped up joyfully and left his outer garment behind, rushing to where Jesus was.
Okay, left his outer garment behind. I think a lot of us might just skim over that. He threw off his coat, so what?
But our sources really emphasize this detail. That cloak, that outer garment, it wasn't just clothing. It was absolutely critical for him.
What did it represent then in his life?
It was basically everything to him. For a beggar, that cloak was, well, it was his bed at night, his protection from the sun, the cold, the rain.
Okay.
And maybe most importantly, it was likely the blanket or the mat he spread out to collect corns the alms people gave him. It represented his entire economic security system, such as it was.
Wow. So it was his means of survival.
Totally. By just dropping it, leaving it behind, he was symbolically dishing his past life, his only source of earthly security, any kind of plan B he might have had.
He literally abandoned his financial safety net to rush towards an uncertain future with Jesus.
It's an astonishing display of faith and immediacy.
He didn't even pause, did he? Didn't stop to pick it up, fold it neatly. He just moved so quickly, so joyfully, with such certainty, presumably just following the sound of the voices saying Jesus was calling him.
Yeah, the coat just became irrelevant in that moment.
It really speaks volumes about his conviction, doesn't it? That this encounter wasn't just a chance for like a temporary fix, but a definitive life-changing moment.
He bet everything on this encounter.
And so when Jesus finally asks that core question, what do you want me to do for you? Bartimaeus' answer is incredibly practical, grounded.
Sure, I want to see.
Exactly. He asked for the physiological healing, the most immediate relief he needed to, move from dependence to independence. Makes perfect sense.
Right, so we have this pivotal moment. A desperate physical need met with this profound spiritual response. Bartimaeus asks for his eyes to work again.
Which, let's be honest, was the most necessary, practical thing for his survival.
Absolutely. But Jesus offers something that goes far, far beyond just restored vision.
This is where those layers you mentioned come in.
Exactly. Jesus doesn't just, perform a clinical cure and send him on his way. He says, go, your faith has made you whole, or saved you, depending on the translation.
The emphasis is entirely on the faith part.
Completely.
Yeah.
Jesus highlights the role of Bartimaeus' belief, that unwavering trust he showed, that Jesus had the authority and the power that was what brought about the rescue.
Okay, but let's push on that a bit. Our sources mention how desperate his physical needs were. Wouldn't most people today still argue that, getting your sight back, being able to get a job, feed yourself, isn't that the most critical, immediate blessing?
From a purely earthly perspective, maybe?
So why does Jesus seem to prioritize the internal, the eternal aspect salvation over the practical, immediate earthly need?
Because the physical healing, crucial as it seems, is ultimately external and temporary. It's a visible miracle, yes, absolutely. But physical flesh, no matter how perfectly you restore it.
It's still mortal.
Exactly. It still decays, gets sick, eventually dies. The greater, the more profound healing was the salvation of his soul, deliverance from spiritual death.
So the miracle of sight was the immediate effect, but the faith was the lasting internal cause.
Precisely. And that faith guaranteed the ultimate eternal deliverance. To prioritize only the temporary physical fix is to kind of miss the whole point of Jesus' mission.
Okay, that reframes it significantly. The physical healing then becomes like evidence or a down payment on the bigger promise.
It's a tangible, powerful guarantee of the future, complete healing that's available through belief. The belief is the lasting gift.
And the proof of this deeper salvation you mentioned is in what he does next.
Immediately evident. Bartimaeus saw instantly, the text says, and then, crucially, he followed Jesus on the road.
He didn't just say thanks and go back to his old spot or run home.
Nope. He didn't go show his family, didn't run off to start a new life or job in Jericho. He dedicated his brand new ability, his sight, to discipleship, following Jesus.
So that establishes a critical link that our sources really hammer home. Following Jesus is the kind of inevitable consequence, the action that immediately flows from true transformative belief.
Yes, a true transformation. one based on salvation, not just like a transactional healing. It has to manifest in discipleship, in a change of life direction. You can't stay the same.
If his healing had only been physical, just eyes
We
fixed.
probably would have used that site for, practical gain in Jericho. Get a job, build a life there. Totally understandable.
But because his faith saved him, his whole life's priority shifted completely.
He became a follower, dedicating his life to walking that path with Jesus. It's a powerful image.
We really need to keep this in mind, I think, when we think about Jesus' ultimate goal. We all desperately want physical healing in this life, right? And miraculous healing certainly happens.
It does.
Yeah.
But we have to accept that ultimately all physical healing is temporary. Our bodies wear out. We still face sickness, eventual death, challenges. It's part of the human condition.
Our flesh is finite.
Exactly. So Jesus' ultimate goal isn't just to grant us a slightly longer or maybe healthier mortal life. It's to grant eternal healing, complete healing.
Healing that deals with the whole person, body, soul, spirit across eternity.
That's the ultimate existential need of humanity. And the healing of Bartimaeus is this powerful signpost pointing straight towards it. The message seems crystal clear. True belief, real faith is the indispensable key to that ultimate lasting rescue.
Okay, let's look more closely at the intentionality behind this miracle. Our sources keep reminding us that Jesus' acts weren't random. They weren't just, flashy displays of power.
No, they were meticulously designed. Strategic signs meant to reveal something very specific about who he was and what his purpose was.
So these miracles, they operate on a couple of levels.
At least two, yeah. First, and this is crucial for the original audience, they fulfilled Old Testament prophecy. This validated his identity as the promised Messiah.
Like Isaiah's prophecy.
Exactly. Isaiah specifically foretold that, quote, the eyes of the blind will be opened and the ears of the deaf unstopped. So when Jesus does this, it's like a definitive stamp prophecy fulfilled. Check.
Okay, that's level one. What's the second level? You mentioned the word sign.
Right. This is maybe more insightful for us today. The Jewish people at the time often referred to miracles not just as wonders or mighty works, but specifically as signs or signposts.
Why that particular emphasis? Sign versus wonder.
Well, it kind of reflects a theological perspective.
Yeah.
For them, God's action creating healing, demonstrating power, was sort of inherent to who God is. Natural in a divine sense.
Yeah.
Self-evident, God speaks, it happens.
So the miracle wasn't so much that nature was being violated.
Right. The miracle, the sign, was the fact that the God of creation was actively intervening right there among them through this person, Jesus. So the healing itself pointed directly to the person performing it, proclaiming his divine authority.
Ah, so it's a pointer, not just a spectacle.
Exactly. It's pointing somewhere, or rather to someone.
That distinction is really crucial. Okay, so now let's dig into what the specific miracle, curing blindness, points towards. The cure for physical blindness acts as this powerful signpost for curing spiritual blindness.
Yes. And in Scripture, blindness is used metaphorically, like all the time. It describes various severe states of spiritual decay or deficiency.
It's a recurring theme.
Definitely. And our sources identify 4 major distinct types of spiritual blindness. Understanding these really helps us grasp the full depth of Bartimaeus' initial condition and the completeness of his cure.
Okay, let's take them one by one. The first one you mentioned is judicial blindness.
Right, judicial blindness. This basically means the inability to judge fairly, to see the truth in the situation requiring justice.
Where do we see that?
It's articulated very clearly in Exodus, which warns specifically against taking bribes. The text says a bribe blinds the clear-sighted judgment. The Hebrew implies someone who should be able to see clearly.
So it corrupts their vision.
Exactly. It perverts the words of the righteous, leads directly to unjust judgment. So a judge, an authority figure, they might have perfect physical eyesight, 20/20 vision.
But if they accept a bribe or some other external influence like political pressure or personal favor,
Their internal moral vision gets corrupted. They become functionally blind to the truth of the matter. They can't see fairness, can't act on it. Their physical eyes are wide open, but their spiritual eyes are slammed shut to morality and justice.
it's a loss of objectivity caused by moral compromise. A serious warning.
Definitely. It shows how external temptations can blind you to reality, even if you technically have all the facts and the ability to see clearly.
Okay, that's one. The second type you listed is blindness due to idolatry.
Yeah, idolatry. This comes up strongly with the prophet Isaiah. He talks about people who make or worship idols, carved images.
What does he say about them?
He describes them as empty. They see nothing, know nothing, and ultimately they'll be ashamed.
So the idea is if you fix your devotion, your time, your energy, your worship onto something created,
Whether that's a literal statue or, maybe a modern equivalent like career, ambition, wealth, status, even another person.
you effectively take on the inherent blindness of the thing you're worshiping.
That's the implication. It's like an object lesson in spiritual ignorance. You become blind because you're transfixed by something that inherently has no ultimate truth, no lasting value, no real life to offer you. It can't see, so you can't see beyond it.
It's the classic substitution error, isn't it? Worshiping the creation instead of the creator.
And as a result, your vision just narrows down to the temporary, limited horizon of that created thing. You can't see the bigger picture.
Okay. The third type, which you said is maybe the broadest spiritual condition, is spiritual ignorance.
Right. Spiritual ignorance. This is the state of simply not yet knowing God's foundational truth, living in what the Bible often calls spiritual darkness.
So a person in this state could be highly intelligent, educated, successful by worldly standards.
Absolutely. Brilliant, scientifically informed, maybe ethically upright in many ways, but their spiritual eyes just remain unopened to divine truth, to the reality of God.
And this has a specific consequence.
Yes, it fundamentally prevents a person from being able truly to glorify God.
Now, this raises a really important point, one that often comes up in our source material. What about people who are, say, non-believers, but they perform many good deeds, moral actions, sometimes, demonstrably more good works than people who claim to believe? How does that connect to spiritual sight and glorification?
It's a crucial question, and it hinges entirely on recognition. Our sources stress that while non-believers are absolutely capable of wonderful moral acts because they're still made in God's image, reflecting his nature in some way.
So the capacity for good is there.
Yes. But only those who know God, who recognize the Creator, the source of that goodness, can truly glorify him through their actions. If you don't recognize the ultimate source of all goodness, truth, and beauty,
Then your moral actions, however good they are.
can't really be consciously directed towards his glory. Recognition of Jesus, knowing God, is the absolute prerequisite for turning moral activity into conscious spiritual glorification.
Okay, so the goodness might have the same ultimate source, the creator, but it's the knowledge, the spiritual sight, that allows a person to consciously acknowledge and direct that goodness back to the source as worship.
You've got it. That's the key distinction. Spiritual sight is the knowledge needed to make that connection, that conversion from just doing good to glorifying God.
All right, and finally, the fourth type of blindness. You said this one is arguably the most corrosive.
Yes. Blindness to personal sin. This is often defined simply as self-righteousness.
Ah, the ultimate human delusion, maybe.
It could well be. It's this profound lack of awareness of one's own fallen nature, one's own deep need. The person genuinely believes they are perfectly fine. They think they're righteous, or at least morally okay, based on their own efforts or standards.
And because they believe they have no fundamental spiritual need for rescue,
They are completely unable to see the inner darkness, the sin that requires divine light, divine intervention. They don't see the need, so they don't seek the cure.
this sounds exactly like the condition of many of the religious leaders in Jesus' day, like the Pharisees.
Precisely. They had the scriptures, they followed the letter of the law meticulously, yet they were so utterly convinced of their own accumulated righteousness
That they couldn't recognize the Messiah standing right in front of them.
and couldn't see their own desperate need for repentance and mercy.
Mm.
They were the sighted who were spiritually blind, just as Jesus pointed out. It's a chilling reminder, isn't it? Religious activity, even diligence, doesn't automatically equal spiritual sight.
Not at all. So the healing of Bartimaeus, when you look at it this way, it's not just fixing his physical eyes.
No, it's like an antidote to all four of these spiritual conditions simultaneously. He was lifted from the margins, right?
Hmm.
Overcoming that social invisibility, that judicial blindness of society towards him, his focus was redirected from earthly security, the cloak, away from potential idolatry. He gained knowledge of the Messiah, overcoming spiritual ignorance,
And his cry for mercy.
showed his profound humility, his awareness of his desperate need, the complete opposite of self-righteousness. It was a total cure, inside and out.
That whole analysis leads to a pretty sobering question, I think, for people listening today who are followers. We've established that spiritual blindness isn't just like a starting condition someone might be in before faith. It can be a state. So can believers, people who've been baptized, who know God, who have genuinely experienced salvation, can they potentially become spiritually blind again? Or at least maybe experience temporary spiritual sight loss?
The spiritual answer seems to be a definite yes, though we probably need to distinguish carefully between losing sight and losing salvation.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
Our sources strongly suggest that believers absolutely can, and often do, lose sight or focus. It might be in temporary ways, sometimes habitual ways. We can become spiritually unresponsive, numb almost.
To help illustrate this, our source material uses a really fascinating real-world example. It talks about the analogy of certain brain defects, specifically related to vision,
Right, like if there's physical damage to the connection, say, between the brain hemispheres.
the corpus callosum.
Exactly. A person's eyes might physically register an object perfectly well on one side of their visual field, but the brain literally cannot process or register that information.
So they are, for all intents and purposes, temporarily and functionally blind to whatever is in that specific part of their vision.
Right. And it's not a problem with the eye itself. It's a defect in the processing, in the connection. The visual data is there, the eye is working fine, but the processing is broken, creating this void in their perception. The information exists, but the person is blind to it.
And this is where that witty little comparison comes in from the source material.
Yeah.
Comparing this clinical defect to just everyday human stubbornness, they relate it to situations, maybe in married life where one spouse sees but does not see or hears but does not hear.
It's not a medical issue then.
No, it's purely psychological or maybe volitional. The brain, or rather the will, is actively choosing to filter the input out, choosing to ignore or disregard the stimulus, even when it's clearly right there.
Chuckles. Well, while that analogy might touch on some deep-seated human dynamics, the point is actually quite valid for our spiritual journey.
How so?
We can allow emotional filters, psychological blocks, or just plain habitual disobedience to act like those defective connections. They block out the divine input.
So God might be clearly showing us something or telling us to do something.
And we become temporarily spiritually blind to it. We ignore it. We filter out the difficult command, maybe in favor of our own comfort or convenience. We see, but do not see.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's pivot back to Bartimaeus. His behavior, his actions, they seem to provide an incredibly practical roadmap for overcoming these kinds of filtering obstacles and maintaining clear spiritual vision, especially in our chaotic world.
Absolutely. His story gives us at least 3 key lessons in spiritual discipline: focus, persistence, and shedding distractions.
Let's take the first one. Focus and concentration.
Right. Remember, Bartimaeus was in this loud, chaotic environment. The clamor of a huge crowd, the noise of a busy city gate. He needed intense concentration just to pick out and follow Jesus' voice amidst all that.
Now think about our environment today.
Exactly. The sheer volume of modern distractions is overwhelming. The constant phone notifications, the endless social media streams, the 24/7 news cycle, it all constantly pulls our focus away from the divine signal, doesn't it?
Our modern world feels engineered to fragment our attention. It's like a constant spiritual assault on concentration.
It really is. We struggle to find quiet time. We struggle to focus even during dedicated moments of worship or prayer. Bartimaeus had to deliberately, actively block out the noise of the many just to hear that one crucial voice.
We need to fight just as hard, maybe harder, to maintain that concentration on God's signal amidst all the demanding noise of our lives.
That's the first lesson. The second key is persistence, the refusal to stop.
We saw this earlier. When the crowd tried to shut him down when they condemned him, told him to be quiet because he was, poor, blind, marginalized, weak.
He persisted. He shouted even louder.
Yeah.
The lesson for us is we have to pursue God regardless of hindrance, regardless of criticism, regardless of social pressure.
That kind of stubborn, radical refusal to be dismissed, that's real spiritual grit, isn't it?
It really is. When he met opposition, he didn't retreat or rethink. He actually intensified his effort. They told him to be quiet because it was inconvenient, and his response was basically to be twice as loud.
That tenacity seems crucial, especially when the world, or sometimes even maybe people within the church, try to make your passionate pursuit of God seem inappropriate or excessive.
You have to push through that. And the third lesson, which is often, I think, the most challenging one for many of us today, is shedding distractions, symbolized so powerfully by that garment.
Right. Bartimaeus left his cloak behind to rush to Jesus. And as we established, that cloak was his material security, his safety net, his livelihood.
So the application for us is pretty profound and immediate. Our sources challenge us directly. Is there too much stuff in our lives?
Stuff meaning possessions, habits, commitments.
All of the above. Too many possessions, too many ingrained habits, maybe too many cultural customs or expectations that are cluttering up our lives and acting as spiritual interference, like static on the line.
And the call is we must be willing to let go of whatever gives us that false sense of earthly security or even just comfort if we want to follow Jesus wholeheartedly and, importantly, quickly.
If we're weighed down by too many material attachments or maybe even emotional dependencies that keep us tethered to a comfortable, safe, unchallenging status quo.
We can't respond with that radical haste that Bartimaeus showed. We'll be too busy folding our cloak or worrying about leaving it behind.
Exactly. The coat represented security, sure, but in that moment, it was also a hindrance to getting to Jesus quickly. Bartimaeus showed this beautiful humility, this willingness to put the pursuit of the master way ahead of his worldly means. He embraced the insecurity of radical faith.
Let's talk about value for a minute because it connects so well to this idea of what we choose to hold on to and what we're willing or unwilling to shed.
Good connection.
Everything in our world gets assigned a value, right?
Right.
We use metrics money, usually to judge the importance or worth of an iPhone, a bar of gold, a diamond.
We're constantly evaluating things.
But how does God, the creator, measure our inherent value as human beings?
That is the ultimate clarifying question, isn't it? And our sources are absolutely clear on this. Our value isn't determined by our economic output, our achievements, our IQ, our social status, or our wealth.
None of the usual human metrics apply.
No. Our value is determined by one thing: what God willingly sacrificed for us.
The life of his son, Jesus Christ.
Exactly. That's the metric. And when you use that measure, it proves that humanity is profoundly, incredibly precious.
Yeah.
Beyond any possible earthly calculation.
When you really try to internalize the just astronomical cost of our redemption, the willing sacrifice of the divine Son for us, it sets the value of a single human soul infinitely high.
It has to. And that fact alone should just obliterate any human-made distinctions based on class or wealth or power.
Which leads us right back to the universal nature of salvation that Bartimaeus' story shows so clearly.
Absolutely. Jesus' focus is always on the soul, on seeking and saving those who are still lost in spiritual darkness. And look at Bartimaeus, sitting by the road, poor, blind, marginalized. He was among the most vulnerable, the weakest people in that society.
Yet Jesus stopped everything for him. The whole procession, the crowd, his own journey and schedule, he stopped it all to save this one man.
It powerfully emphasizes the principle of universal grace. God's concern extends equally to absolutely everyone, regardless of their social standing, their wealth, their power, their background, their perceived identity. It doesn't matter.
The blood of Christ, as the saying goes, is not cheap.
Not at all. It is infinitely costly, infinitely precious. And it applies just as much to the rich person in their mansion as it does to the poor beggar on the street, to the powerful CEO and the overlooked cleaner. There's no distinction in value.
And this assurance, this knowledge of our infinite value, completely independent of our earthly performance or status, that's what draws us into a real relationship with God, isn't it?
It's foundational. When our spiritual eyes are truly opened, like Bartimaeus' were, we're transformed. We go from being strangers, maybe even enemies, to becoming God's own children.
And this brings us to a really beautiful concluding insight from our sources, focusing on the kind of language we use when we talk to God, the intimacy of it.
Yeah. When we pray the prayer Jesus taught, we often recite it in English as Our Father in Heaven, which is fine. It's respectful.
But there's a deeper layer.
There is. The deeper, more accurate intent, reflecting the original Aramaic term Jesus himself likely used and encouraged, is the use of Abba, Father.
Abba, what does that signify?
Abba is this incredibly intimate, familial term of love and trust. It's much closer to calling him Daddy or Papa than just the formal, perhaps slightly distanced father.
Wow, that's a huge difference in tone and relationship.
It signifies a fundamental change in our relationship status. We're not just subjects addressing a mighty king anymore. We are beloved children talking to our loving dad. That's the access spiritual sight grants us.
That shift from a purely formal, respectful title to an intimate, trusting, familial term, it really underscores the level of personal connection and belonging that comes with salvation.
We are children of a loving parent, not just servants.
And that intimacy, that relationship, it provides deep assurance, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Just like good earthly parents strive, often imperfectly, but they strive to give the absolute best they can to their children.
Our Heavenly Father, our Abba Father, gives what is ultimately truly best for our lives. Even if, from our limited perspective, we don't always agree with his plan at the time or fully understand it
He
immediately.
can trust him because we know who we are to him. We are his. That relationship changes everything. Hashtag had outro.
This has been a really insightful deep dive into just a few verses of Scripture. A powerful, concise story packed with meaning.
It really is. So much depth there.
And the central takeaway, it seems, remains crystal clear. The miracle of Bartimaeus is fundamentally a lesson that faith is the engine, the mechanism for salvation.
That's the core transaction Jesus points to.
And this salvation, when it's truly received, doesn't just stay internal. It immediately prompts us to follow Jesus and to testify, through our changed lives, to the profound change that's occurred.
And the face Bartimaeus showed, it wasn't just like intellectual agreement, was it? It was demonstrated powerfully by his physical actions.
His radical persistence against the crowd.
His focused calling out using that messianic title.
His joyful haste in responding.
And crucially, his willingness to just drop his source of earthly security, that vital cloak. He clearly prioritized the giver over any gift or security the world could offer.
Which brings us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to reflect on. Bartimaeus' faith saved him, and it prompted him to follow Jesus immediately, without reservation, leaving his security behind.
So the question for you is this. What possession, what custom, what comfort, what deeply ingrained habit in your life is the equivalent of Bartimaeus' outer garment?
What represents your current means of security, or maybe your primary comfort, or even just your favorite distraction?
What is that thing that you might need to leave behind immediately and completely, maybe even joyfully, in order to follow the path that's truly set before you?
Something to think about. That shedding of maybe false security. Mull that over until our next deep dive.